So, hey, everybody, it's Teepa. Down below on my screen anyway, over to the side, I have Christine, I have Shelly, and I have Amanda. Those are the three other people beside me who are present from Positive Approach to Care, or PAC. So what we're doing today is exploring how we might make use of this guidebook, and it is a guidebook, very different than some other things that we put together, and it's the second guidebook because we did another guidebook. And the other guidebook we did is called Relationships. And then we did When is Enough Enough? Now, I will say that we didn't intend initially that this was the title or this was what we were going to do. We were going to do engagement. And we took a step back and went, I think we need a pause. So I'm going to have you put your hand out, and I'm going to have you initiate and sequence and finish something and move on and start something and do something and finish something and move on. And so what we decided is pause. We went pause. Let's hit the pause button here a little bit, because what we decided is, hang on, it's not that we need more stuff to do. We need to look harder at what we're doing and what we're doing without thinking about it. That's working well. That's working sort of like that. And what's not working for us. Because if we don't pause and check in, the thing we value most, which is relationships with other people, relationships will struggle because we're struggling. And one of the challenges is when we get into this mode of just finishing something and move on, finishing something and move on, we get into this mode of not actually thinking about what we're doing. It's just sort of this grind that we go through. And recently, right before the webinar, I'm listening, and of course, I'll probably get the tune sort of wrong. You'll know how that works for me. But I'm in a hurry to get things done. Until life's no fun. And when I heard it, it was great. It made a lot of sense. And now I don't remember all the things, but yeah, I'm in a hurry to get things done. I rush and rush until life's no fun. All I ever want to do or need to do is live and die. I'm in a worry, I'm in a hurry, and I don't know why. So we thought, what if we explored this a little bit? What if we sort of figured this out a little bit more for ourselves and for other folks? So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, because this session is how would you use this resource? So I thought I'd sort of come up with some ways that you could use the resource. Now, part of today is going to be me just using the resource, and part of it will be an opportunity to raise questions about how you, in your role, might use the resource. So this is our webinar on, how to use When is Enough Enough Guide, a positive approach to finding balance in a caring life. So the question I have is, who wrote the guidebook? And we're going to turn to page 1. So one of the ways you use the book is to actually open it. So if you have your own copy, that's super. And if not, I happen to have one, and Christine has one as well, and we can hold it up. And on page 1, you will see who wrote the book. And not the book of love, the book of When is Enough Enough, so just so we're clear what we're talking about. And you can see right away that it's not a single entity. I didn't write this, Christine didn't write this, Dan didn't write this. We shared the writing of this, the creation of this. And it did start with an idea, but that's where I said the original idea was engagement. So we came a long way from that thought. So I'm going to give you a second, and I'm going to I'll read my entry here. And then Christine is going to read her entry. And then Amanda, if we don't have Dan, I'll let you read Dan's entry if you have it. Do you have one that you can look at? Good. Okay, so keep us note. In parentheses, my goal with this guide is not to be right, to be helpful. You will be the person who determines what is right for you and when enough is enough for you. So that's my piece. Christine, yours.
Deciding that you are ready to take the next step or figure something out requires courage and a willingness to look in the mirror. The journey of this guide has been one of growth, acceptance, and realizing that the needs we have really do matter and are important. My hope is that this guide will help you identify one thing that you might be willing to try, shift, or change.
All right. And then we have Dan in the person of Amanda, because Dan's not available right now. She doesn't sound or look a bit like him, but she'll do the best.
She's related to him.
I was running to get my book. Or am I choosing a passage to read or something
No,
else?
you are reading what Dan wrote on page 1.
Oh, perfect. Oh, well, that's easy enough. Okay. So Dan Bulgarelli wrestled with the concept of enough for quite some time when the idea was brought to me. How do you define enough? It led me down a road of self-exploration, and at times I felt exposed, but only to myself. Thankfully, I had Christine and Teepa to lean on, and I feel like I have a better understanding of enough and myself. I hope this book and the subsequent resources will be helpful as helpful to you as they are to me. And I can validate that there was a lot of doubt and confusion around this enough situation as the three of them figured this out.
So just looking at who we are and what we wrote, what does that tell you about us and this book? So audience, this is your turn to actually contribute, because we'll bring something, but if I was working with a group of people, I might first ask them who wrote this book and what are they trying to tell us even in their introduction. So what do you notice about the intros from these 3 different human beings?
One thing Patty said is the theme is to remember that you are important. The person reading the book is important.
Oh, yeah, this is about the individual who's taking this in and going to do something with it. So this is about, really, for Christine, it was called looking in the mirror. For me, it was like, I'm not sitting in judgment. I'm just here to be helpful, truly. And you get to determine what's right for you. I mean, that's you, but question is, when is enough for you? And so what did we have from Dan? Where was Dan with this? And so what did you notice about Dan's piece?
Are you wanting me to speak out, or is this audience participation?
Well, this is an opportunity for audience, but since Amanda read your passage, you could, if you wanted to, what did you notice about your piece? If no one else is contributing there, we'll let you have a voice there, Dan.
I really struggled with what the concept of enough was. Just trying to wrap my head around like a definition without using the same word within it. Like, how do you say enough without saying enough? And then just even the battle of like the idea of stress. When is enough stress? Like the idea that some stress can be good. That one really threw me for a loop. And so it really did become a battle for me, and I struggled with this one a lot. I think I got to a pretty good place, but it was definitely a battle.
It was definitely hard work for Dan. I would give that, because I mean, we would go back and forth and back and forth. Sort of more like a teeter-totter, than a balancing act. Felt a lot like we were really trying to do a teeter-totter thing, because enough has so many variables attached to it for human beings. So who is this for? We're going to switch gears and talk about now, who would the book be for? So look at page 1, which is actually before page 1. I'm going to have you look at pictures. And so we're talking about, it is a team, and this stuff, but I'm going to actually look at who it's for. I want you to look at the inside cover. So not the words, but we're going to be looking here. So let me see if I can get it in a good space so you can notice this picture. So this is the first picture I want you to think about. Who is this for?
People, with that in the way, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Well, let somebody else hold their picture up then, because if I hold the picture up, you won't be able to hear me, apparently.
I will hold my picture up. And for those of you who purchased your book on Amazon, it's actually going to be behind the first page. For some books, it might be on the cover, but.
Okay, so the inside cover where you see me and two little boys piling a bunch of rocks in my hands and me just trying to hold the rocks there. And you get a sense of the picture. And then turn to page 20, if you would, which is a picture again. And I'll hold mine up for just a second so you can see it. And Christine, you want to slide over. There's one where we have a human being doing something with rocks again, or stones. Then I'd have you look at page 51. Take a look at 51. So that's a ways forward there a little bit. So we're just looking at pictures. That's all we're doing. We're not looking at any words whatsoever. And we have a guy looking in the mirror. Okay, and then 54. Yep. And then page 58. Which is slices of people there, a whole bunch of different folks. So if you look at all those pictures, who is this book for? If I'm showing you all those pictures and I'm saying, so who is this book for? What is it? What are all those pictures saying to you?
So
That
lots
first
of people
picture.
are saying care partners, everyone, anybody who's looking for intergenerational support or trying to support people, lots of different other support, giving support, but a lot of all of us too.
A lot of all of us. The person sitting on the steps with all the unpacked boxes and the rugs, and he's got a cup of coffee. It's like, wonder what that message is. I mean, wonder who that is for some of us. The variable people, which is actually at the very start of when we start talking about different personality traits and how that might play into this idea of enough. The situation where we have a guy looking at himself in the mirror and he looks sort of exhausted and he looks like, I've got all of this in front of me and Now, the page I did not pull, which I'm going to have you pull right now, is one that is such an interesting one, 77. Pull this one.
Is that you and Amanda at Hot Yoga?
That's hysterical laughter right there. So of all the people it's for, why did I not pull this one to describe who this would be for?
Mary Lynn says it looks like a balancing act. So maybe, because they've actually found balance.
Well, I guess in the moment they're doing terrific. So I doubt that this book would be of interest for anybody who's actually feeling like absolutely in a perfect space with their partner, and their partner is super skillful. They're super skillful, and they're not feeling stressed because they are so super skillful, and they are feeling super good about all the wonderful stuff they're doing. I'm not thinking this book is for them. I am just saying, I don't think so. So, I mean, we have it toward the back of the book, so maybe you can eventually get there if you're real lucky for a moment. But we don't think those people actually exist, especially looking like that. But maybe they do, but we're not. Honestly, I do not think this would be the book for them, because this is a basic book about the basics of figuring out balance and caring. It's not advanced yoga. It's not like super intense therapy. It's not meant to be this be all and tell all. It's basically a basic guide to get you going, to get us going as individuals, maybe in a group. So where do you see yourself in those images that I showed you? I mean, where are you in the images? Not in the words, just the images. And you can look for other pictures too. There might be other ones that better suit you as you just glance through here. And you may not even be looking at people. You may be looking at rocks and piles. Because every image that we selected the image because one or more of us found real value in it and the other two agreed. So there's nothing in this book that we put in here that we didn't come to consensus on, which means we went from teeter-tottering at some point with this book to actually becoming balanced and feeling stable enough among what we were saying and between what we were saying to actually establish how we thought this would move forward and could move forward with people who are super different in many, many ways, and yet find some common ground in caring for one another, caring in their lives, finding that balance in being who you are, doing what you do, and also recognizing that you're going to provide support and care for someone or something in some way. So anybody have anything to contribute when you want to look at what you see in this book and who you see yourself as? Because I'll be honest, guys, I picked the image because I don't know if you can tell. I mean, I got my hands full of a lot of rocks. And I got two little kids with limited awareness about how much the rocks are starting to be a challenge, but they think it's hysterical. They think it's actually pretty funny to see if they can get a rock and find out whether Nana will lose it or not. And hence, I will say the phrase, if you ever tell a human being, you're getting on my very last nerve, and they are in amber state, you just issued a challenge. Can you tip me over? Can you push me to that one last limit so I can see you do something really super interesting? And we don't think of it that way, but sometimes in our care relationships, we can put down a line in the sand and without realizing, how many of you have ever done a line in the sand? How many of you have ever done that dare, that promise? If you, one more time, have you ever done that? Just wondering.
Yes, anybody who may have heard about my Emma or know her, she didn't touch the line, but she put her hand over it and just kind of hovered.
Oh yeah, that's a backseat tradition. That's a backseat tradition between brothers and sisters. If each just has their territory, then you try as hard as you can to see if you can get the other one to break the rule.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the reason I say that is as you're looking at the pages and the pictures in this book, I encourage you first, either in a group or one-on-one. One way to use this book is just to use images, to skip some of the words and go to some of the pictures. And the reason I say that is apparent later in the book, because not everybody learns the same. And that may actually help you when you go back to look at the relationships book. But for right now, figuring out how do you like to get information in? What works well for you? You could have someone in your life that actually doesn't read well or doesn't look at words and get words, but you could show pictures and say, where are you? Which one of these? Which one of these is where you are right now? Because this is a book that we can use with one another, even if one of us doesn't have the fine skill of word interpretation. We can still do something with this book, and we designed it that way. So it could be used with someone who has some level of inability to take in verbal data, either spoken or even read. So who could this guide be used for? Well, I think it could be used for us individually, but I also think other individuals, just people, could use this guide. And we'll get into some of the ways in which you can. Some of it's pretty obvious and some of it might not be. But I would also say it can be super helpful if you're working with a partner. And you and your partner are trying to figure out how to do the caring. If you're figuring out how to share the load, if you and your partner are trying to figure out who should take responsibility for what, and who is taking as much as they want and might need to bring in a third partner rather than simply keep working with the partners we have. Who might be feeling not partnered? Although we think of it as a partnership, maybe the other person is not feeling like a partner. They're feeling more like a care receiver than a care partner because of how we might be trying to go about this. We also could be using it in families. As we start to explore with other members of our family, who is feeling cared for, who's feeling left out, who's feeling overwhelmed, who's feeling, because this idea of enough, there is a lot to be done. There is a whole lot to be done when we talk about care. So the question becomes enough, how to interpret that. So families need to decide enough for each individual, but also as a family unit. What is enough as a family unit? What is enough in a partnership? What is enough for a team? Because I think sometimes we don't realize teams are like families, but they're different. Because we have our own family outside of the teamwork that we do, but we also have a team that sometimes functions sort of like a work family. Just saying. And sometimes the roles we're placed in are roles that we are given by society or by our training, but not by our preference. And so sometimes the role that we have in the team might be administrative, or it might be leadership, or it might be following, or it might be following through, or it might be a subgrouping, or it might be report generation. Whatever those kinds of responsibilities are, looking at, is that role enough? Is that role, are you able to do it well enough? Is it a role that you find fulfilling enough? I mean, and looking at that from a team perspective rather than a family perspective. And then finally, looking at this, sometimes not finally, but another one is looking at this in a support group mode, because what can be enough for one situation might not be for another situation. What's okay at one point in a relationship, in a progress through dementia, might change as dementia changes, or as the person's health or well-being changes, as one of us finds that we have new things on our plate. So in a support group, there are so many different individuals involved, and all of them have their own thing going on, that when is enough is a great way to help support group members realize my experience and your experience, my journey and your journey may be very different. So the goal in a support group for me, often using something like this, is to allow people to share experiences, but to encourage them to stop sharing opinions or making judgments about other people's choices and options and relationships and what is too much or what is okay, but to really be comfortable recognizing I can share an experience here to provide enough information about my experience, but I'm not part of your experience. I can share about mine, and that becomes something that could be valuable. And it's actually much more valuable for someone else to take it from that perspective than for me to offer you my opinion about your situation based solely on my situation. So I enjoy using this kind of tool in a support group because it keeps us honest with one another to recognize what I have to offer is a take on my experience. I'm not going to say to you, well, this is probably what you should do because this is what I did, but rather, here's what I did and here's how it felt to me. Here's what I did and here's what worked for me or didn't work for me, or here's where I learned for me, and making for me statements. And so this is a very helpful tool to help a group of individuals who are coming together to hold their space, but also offer things over the fence to a neighbor in a friendly way, keeping the boundaries in place. And the same is true, of course, about, I think, teams. But these are opportunities to use this resource in a way to try to keep boundaries that are important boundaries to have, I think, in place. So I'll share my last two, which is in organizations. I think it can be very helpful in organizations. to start to recognize where are we lacking? I mean, are we just trying to do too much with too little? And are we expecting too much of too few? And who are these people, and are they experiencing that feeling as well? And it gives us a chance to honestly reflect each other where we think we are, and for others to be open, but it has to be a safe space. Again, we have to determine that if we're going to do this, we are going to hold this space as safe space. We are going to hold this opportunity as safe, and we got to establish some ground rules for doing that. So I can make I statements, but I can't make I statements about you. So I think you should. It's just, I was thinking that for me, in my situation, this is what I've experienced, and this is how it felt or sounded to me. You can make an I statement, but you can't pass judgment on the other human being. And that's the point of this, is really enough is such a personal experience. There's no way around it. So I also think the PAC certified community members who are on here could make great use of this as a resource in many of the roles they have, by picking something from this book and then deciding what content they want to cover. Like, for instance, with a trainer covering prefrontal cortex and maybe amygdala, and hook those two together, or a coach looking at how to do that process of interacting, and then two things that you liked about what you did and one that you wish was different. And let's practice, let's rehearse it. The consultant, maybe what we could do is look at, okay, prefrontal and amygdala actions. And if we look at what's going on, who do you feel like might not be getting enough? Who might be overloaded? How do you know whether the person that doesn't have language is feeling like they're getting enough or not? How are we doing that? So an engagement, so many opportunities. I mean, which is why we decided enough rather than more activities in engagement. So just saying. So team, anything you want to add in here or kick in at just simply looking at this as a resource and a tool, which is what it is?
I really appreciate you talking about, and I've seen in the chat several people do as well, talking about my experience. Coming at this from, I can share my experience, but without judgment and without direction and without saying, this works for me, I think this, and I think you should. I can make I statements for me and not for you. I think that's provided some pretty big aha moments for me. As well. Maybe for the others. No.
Yeah, and one of the things that's really sort of interesting is, so I'm wondering, tell me, and we're going to get to this, is tell me a little bit more about when you're saying that you're feeling like this, or you're feeling this or thinking this. Tell me more about that. So there's a reflection on our part, and then a request for more information to try to better appreciate that experience that I'm not having. I don't have that experience. So I need more data from you to help me provide support or be responsive, or maybe just to open up the conversation so you can figure it out yourself. I mean, it may not be that I'm doing anything at all other than holding space for you. And sometimes in the holding of the space, that's really the hardest thing for people to get, is that time and that space to be able to do this work. Because we're running around so much, so crazy, that it's hard to do that. And what did I say this book was about? Hitting the pause button. Let's pause before we do anything else. Let's just do that pause. Let's celebrate what we're good at. Let's reflect on what has been done and what have we managed. And let's go, if we want to change something, let's pause and consider, well, what would that do? What would that buy us? What will that cost us? Is it worth it before we go forward? You know, and that's sort of all those pauses, those opportunities, you know? So, you know, it's just that thing that we can do if we choose, and it's always about choice, if we choose. So here's the next thing, okay? We had it coming second, because really and truly, all these things are true about us. We believe that relationships happen and they can be great and they can work okay with some challenges. We believe that some relationships can be absolutely miserable, and we know they can vary a lot. And we might like, want, or need them to change or stay the same. And so the question that we're trying to figure out, how do we answer with this book is, well, how do we do that? I mean, how do we look at what's going on, and if we like, want, or need them to change or stay the same even, how are we going to do that? And so we believe that this guide comes second. Is check out page 83, which is, our effort to help. 83. So Christine, if you want to give us 83 up there, and you might need to actually read it, just the read, because it might be hard to read that little print on the screen.
The second book in our 5-part Ready series, When is Enough Enough, will help you find balance in all areas of your life by considering the 5 basic core human needs. In order to improve or change a relationship, find balance, change a situation, do something different, or have a conversation, we must first be ready.
So we've got the first 2 letters and we're still working on the rest, just so you know. But we think sometimes by taking bite-sized pieces, many of us are going to have to do that with our lives. So we live with 5 Ps every moment of our life. 5 Ps. Okay, so I'm going to see if my PAC teammates know what those 5 Ps stand for in PAC language.
People.
People is 1.
Places,
Places is a second. Props are just stuff if you just have it out there and you don't have any connection to it.
programming,
What are we doing? What's happening? And finally, the last one, which is the most interesting, possibilities. So it turns out that this guide has a very important place when we think about places and spaces, enough, people, including ourselves, enough, props and stuff, enough, programs and daily activities and opportunities, enough, and possibilities for continuing or changing, enough. So this idea of you could take one of these 5 Ps and start going through enough. What places and spaces do you feel you have enough available to you? And where are there places or spaces you feel you don't have enough place or space for you? Or where is it that you feel like you have too many places and spaces for you? And what do you want to do about that? I mean, hold steady, make a shift, let go of something, bring something on. I mean, so just picking one of these and start to explore the idea of enough. That word enough in all its varied meanings. So that's one way that you could use this book combined with the 5 Ps to get yourself to, with a group, with a team. Let's just talk about everybody's places and spaces in this organization. So Amanda, we happen to be in a little building and it has one office in the back where Teffy stays. We have one in the middle that is where you are right now, but you're sharing it with Glenda. And there's one up front that I share with Abby. And then there's a common space, a kitchen space, one bathroom, a back door and a front door and a closet. And there are cabinets in the kitchen and one closet for storage. And a front yard and a porch. And a back area that's got a gravel parking lot and one handicap parking space. So what would you say for you about the space and enough?
Some days it's enough. On days like today, when we're hoping to do an event with multiple people coming, and Fridays when we have lots of engagement happening, and well, even really today with 4 different meetings going on and a training happening in the back because Teffy's doing our trainer cert right now. it does feel like quiet enough space.
Yeah. So, like in a team situation or a home situation or a caregiving situation, do all the parties feel like they get enough space for what Amanda's describing, the work I'm trying to do, maybe the life I'm trying to live, the relationships I'm trying to maintain, the relationship I'm trying to establish, the activities that I'm trying to run? I mean, so this idea of enough just with space, and we could ask others, how are they feeling about it? Because when you don't get the space you feel like is enough for you, it can affect everything. So it's interesting how you could pick one of these. So that's an opportunity to take the book, use it as a resource, looking at I have enough, I am enough, those kind of ideas, but then looking at spaces and places that are real spaces and places for a team, for an individual, for a partnership, for a family. And come up with an idea of this is too much, or this is, and we agree or we disagree, or we have a starting place for a conversation. And so that's where consultants can come in really handy, or coaches, where we really start to explore us, minus, let's go through it. So here's the thing about enough. We may want the other person in the relationship to be the one to keep the relationship going or change it to make it better. I mean, that may really be what we'd like. I mean, there are times it just makes it so much easier if the other person, is able to do that. It turns out, unfortunately, we're going to have to be the one to take responsibilities for ourselves and what we like, want, and need. Then the question becomes, well, how do we sustain something, or how do we switch? Now we come to another helpful little, I think, pack thing. So we use this idea of preparing before you want to do something, initiating once you do want to do something, participating and getting the other person to participate in this activity, and then evaluate what's going on and determine, do I want to sustain or do I want to switch? So before you just switch or sustain, you got to go through some work to do that. And so this book is an opportunity. Things in this book actually provide opportunities to prepare yourself to initiate something by making sure you really do want to initiate what you want to initiate. And you're not wasting a lot of energy. And then it turns out, well, I didn't do the preparation, so this isn't going to go anywhere. Or I didn't do the preparation and now it's impacting the relationship. Or it's really bothering me and I don't know what to do. So the book might help you prepare for that. So when I say the word, I'm going to say the word, enough. Okay, what does that bring to mind? So I'm just going to work on tone of voice, and I'll deliver enough in several different tones. So I did enough.
Look, pretty content, satisfied is what Sam says.
Satisfied.
Peace.
Mm-hmm. Be at peace. Mm-hmm. Anything else people can think of when you get that sound of enough?
Relief.
Relief.
Okay, that's a good one.
Content. Did I say that already?
Okay. Enough.
Frustration, too much, overwhelming, stop, the stress.
Okay, well, that one was quickly picked up. Yeah. How about, enough.
We stop. We're balanced.
It's kind of in the middle.
No.
Yeah.
So what was implied with this one? And I think this is often, what's the implication of this one?
Better back off. I'm being nice right now, but we're on the border.
Wow,
maybe.
Christine, boy, you're drawing the line in the sand. I thought somebody was offering me more. And I was like, oh, enough. No,
That just took me right to Braden.
My tummy is really full, but I'll have ice cream. I've had enough dinner, but I would really like dessert. Yeah. How about, oh, please, enough. Enough. It's,
Looking for something, or maybe a
uh-huh.
little overwhelmed, or I don't have enough of what I'm wanting.
I don't have enough of what I want or what I think I need. And so am I able to do something when I don't have enough? Did you think I was going to be able to do something other than just worry about I didn't have enough? Yeah. Well, enough. So sometimes you can play around and have people go around the room. And rather than have people talk about blah, 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 just have them work with the word enough. And they can maybe use 3 or 4 other words and just play with the word enough, because that's what we found out. So Shelley, give us where you are with enough today. Where are you?
Enough. I'm good.
Okay, where were
Really?
you when you were trying to start the webinar and the expert on starting webinars was out of town?
Oh, no, enough.
No, I
Not so good.
I can't do it now. I'm not working. This is not working like it should. This is good enough. I want this to work the way you can't chat. You can't chat. That's not right.
Teepa, I think your microphone is saying enough. It doesn't like the high-pitched frequencies. We can't even hear most of what you're saying because it doesn't like them. It says enough with that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I don't know how many people were on when we were doing that. Some of you might have felt the same way about Shelley. What did you notice about your voice when you were saying those things? Anything?
Oh, it was getting pretty high and intense. Yeah. Yeah.
So, hey, so this idea of people can give us cues and hints without actually saying the word, I've had enough, that's enough, I'm not feeling skilled enough, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I can't take in more data right now. We can really get information from tone of voice. And so that can be super helpful when we're in a care relationship and somebody says to us, wow, you're looking stressed. And we're tempted to say, we're fine. So this is a playful way to sort of start to work even just the word enough and have people sort of go around and give their enough. Okay, so here's another one. Let's look at the words on, and we're going to look at pages 3 to 5, which is near the start of the book. Because this is where, when we started writing this book, things got a little interesting because we had a certain idea in mind when we started. And as we started working, we realized we were going to have to modify it kept shifting. So Dan, since you're on here, would you like to read a little bit for us there?
I don't have it.
Oh, okay.
So
Never mind then.
thank you.
All right, well, thanks for that information. You don't have enough information right in front of you to be able to do it. Well, there you go. Your memory's not great then for page 3 to 5, eh? You probably read it 20, 30, 40 times.
If not more, I read it
If not
enough,
more. But you don't remember enough.
I do not remember enough.
All right. Well, Amanda, would you do the honors then, since you're not speaking for Dan, you're just reading the book, and this is where, again, what you see me doing might be what I actually do, is ask someone in the group to take responsibility for reading out, because some people like to read words, some people like to listen to words. So we're going to start off with both, so you can look at your words or you can listen to Amanda, or you can do both. Go for it. And this is in the section. What section is this in, by the way? Oh, this is even before we get to section 1, which is finding balance. This is the introduction. So go ahead, Amanda.
Enough. Wow, a lot of different meanings all wrapped into one 6-letter word. Interesting that this one word can build someone up with purpose, value, and worth, and the same word, when used differently, can cause someone to crumble, feel lonely, invisible, and pushed aside.
So I'll pause us there, because actually in our enoughs, we didn't attack other people with enough, did we? That was because I set the boundary markers. Amanda, you're not doing enough. Shelley, why do you keep doing so much? I already told you you're doing too much. You need to not do so much because you're not getting enough rest. You need to. Okay, so what's really important, I think, when we're using this beyond ourselves or even with ourselves, is to set boundary markers that blame is not an okay thing to do. That we are not into blaming, shaming, or using the word enough as a weapon. And one of the things that I think for me would be really helpful if we could putting on evaluation, it exceeds expectations. And the middle of the road is meets expectations and then does not meet expectations. Because what that sets us up for is a confrontational sort of approach to looking at how we're doing, rather than a self-reflection of how is it feeling to you? Does it feel like you're getting enough? You are enough. You're contributing enough. You're doing too much. How are you feeling about this? And so one of the guidelines that we would want to establish is this idea of enough can get used as a weapon. It can get used as a judgment. And this book is not promoting any of that. And I think if it's happened before in your life, then you have to be really wary about the word enough when it's used by someone else in talking about your behavior or your abilities or your presence or your role or your job or your relationship. You're not doing it. I mean, whoa. And so often in care situations, we're looking for support. And if that's what we're looking for, one of the challenges we face is how do we not blame others? And so this idea at the very beginning of establishing what the guidelines will be, because if not, Amanda, again, it can be used in lots of different ways. And so what did I do at the very beginning of this work that we're doing to try to help us not get into a situation where people start pointing fingers around when we're doing any kind of work in a partnership or even in a group? Because I think that's super important from my perspective.
As you mentioned, you sort of set the boundary with how far you took your demonstration. So that it's that positive approach to care, that snow approach skill of I share, you share. If I'm trying to guide this group through a really healthy consultation or a really healthy group skill building model or something else, then I want to be really thoughtful about which examples I'm going to give, what tone of voice I'm going to use to convey messages, because then it's an I share, you share, and it's open for you to do that space. But I also need to be careful and thoughtful about how I ask permission to pause in the moment in case things get to a place where it's not okay, or I notice that it's changing the dynamic of the group.
And just as we sometimes look at pictures, there are times when if we were to notice visuals, we might, or tone of voice, we might be able to pick up on in the moment that where we should hit the pause button before this goes further, because we don't want it to go further. So we're going to hit pause and just take a step back and reestablish the space and boundaries so that it stays in a healthier space. Now, because we're getting close on time, I want to give you a couple of examples of how I might use the book. Let's go over to page 12. Because when we get into this idea of finding balance, one of the things that we really want to think about is when you're feeling this pressure, or you're feeling like I'm not getting my needs met, or I need to do something, or it's really vital that we take a pause here. And that's why I said early on, I might look at the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, because one of the things that we have to really figure out is what I'm wanting. Is it actually a need? Is it more a want? Or is it just I'd like? Okay. And then really going to what are the 5 basic core needs that human beings have. So the page that I'm talking about is page 12, like turning to page 12. And Christine has it up there. And then on page 13, we actually bring out what some of those things are. So, so Christine, would you go ahead, and we have the 5 basics, which is intake, rhythm of the day, which is both activity, rest, and all 3, activity, rest, and sleep. And then we have elimination or output. And then we have comfort. And finally, we have pain-free, being pain-free. Those are needs that human beings have. Those are really essential needs to survival. But Christine, if you'd go ahead and start with intake, let's just sort of go to intake, because this is a way we could start this conversation.
Okay. Intake. I need nourishment, food, and water to survive. If I'm in dire need, and if my needs are not being met regularly, then it will not matter if food tastes good or if the water is pure. My body is in need. For
So I'm
most
gonna
of us.
pause. So if I saw somebody getting water out of a toilet bowl and starting to drink it, what are 3 possible explanations that I would want to explore before I made a judgment that this person was deliberately choosing to drink out of a toilet? And that is dangerous.
They might really feel dehydrated.
You might have somebody who is incredibly having a sense of thirst and dehydration. And as far as the spaces and places, they found a place to find something to drink.
Well, maybe there isn't a cup there,
Maybe there's no cup. So
or the sink isn't nearby.
maybe the sink isn't working. Maybe the sink isn't there. Maybe they didn't see the sink. What else might it be? Maybe they like mellow yellow. Oh, see, you guys think that. I mean, but I'm just saying, this is that moment where instead of thinking dangerous, our brain should be going, wow, that's interesting. I wouldn't have necessarily done that myself. So, how can I get someone's attention to see if I can find out more? How can I get that human being in my care routine to pause without enough? What are you doing? I mean, that's a very different kind of thing than if I go, oh, Christine, get something to drink. Ooh,
Yeah.
I have something. Come here, let me show you.
Okay.
So this idea of, if this is happening pretty regularly, what does it say about the place space for you versus the place space for me? And who is going to have to decide what's keepable and what needs to be changed? What are some possibilities? So we can't get good at this care that we do and balanced in the care that we do when we leap to conclusions rather than getting curious about why drinking from the toilet was enough for Christine whereas it wasn't even acceptable to me. So this is where taking a small piece from the book, and you can start thinking, I'm going to read the whole thing, and you look at who's around you and you sort of start to explore, is this a possibility? Is this something that we could do something with? And we could take the same idea and go further. But my goal with this session, and the PowerPoint will be available, is I provide some opportunities for us to start seeing this as a resource. Now, my recommendation is you go through it yourself first, just to read through it and sort of take some time to do some pieces with it. But as you're doing that, think who else in your world might benefit from taking small pieces, baby bites, we call them. And with some preparation, you could initiate something that gets participation. And so you can evaluate, how is it working for the team, for the family, for the partnership? What are we learning? What are we finding out? And so this is a great opportunity to realize in the middle of this book, we actually we dug into, is this a like, want, or need? And for each of these things that we did, we said in the physical realm, in the mental realm, in the emotional realm, and even in the spiritual realm. Because it turns out enough. There's different ones for each of those realms. I'm getting enough of this, I'm not getting enough of that. I'm getting too much of that, but not enough of this. And until we start looking at this stuff a little more deeply, it's hard for us to then be balanced, because without the awareness of where we might be out of balance, it's really tough. And then we start getting into balance, but then we have to realize, part of being in balance is who I am as an individual. So if we look at page 59, where we start looking at personality traits and types, like looking at who you are, what do you need for yourself when you have each of these personality traits? So for an introvert on page 60, you're going to need some alone time, some privacy, and plenty of time to think before you have to answer something. So are you getting that? How much of that are you getting? How often are you getting it? Are you actually allowed to have it in the relationship, or are the relationships you have demanding too much? And you've got to really look at, okay, so what can I do to get what I need so I can keep these relationships going? So I'm going to pause this there, because believe it or not, we've used up a whole hour of your time, and that's enough. Oh, well, maybe for some of you it's not, but our goal here was to help people start to look at this resource and figure out how you might use it. Because we wrote it as a guide, and a guide that would be available for individuals, but also in the work that we do. We find we use it a lot. And it was only when we did this work that I was able to come up with the idea of, we need pipes, connections that get us started and get us to process and get us to figure out where we're going next. And what are those P's that matter for human beings, so they get enough of what they need? So Shelley?
Yeah, I was just going to offer that maybe people want to reach out to our consulting team.
Yep.
At consult@teepasnow.com to talk more about this.
Absolutely. And if you're part of the PAC community and the certified community, you can do more on Facebook, and you could ask us more questions, and you could go to our page that we have set up for this Ready series and sort of figure out what else we're doing there. Because we're really trying to figure out how to make this an engagement. That's where we are engaging. But we've got enough stuff going on that we really would like your feedback and input on this, because this is nothing without you. Because we'll do our part. Was it enough? Or do you need something different? So, all right, everybody, the PowerPoint will be up. This will be rendered, I feel certain, fairly quickly, because Shelley does have that under her belt. And if nothing else is weird going on with this webinar, it should work out. And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon in another opportunity. Take care, everybody.